Right. This is the part where you dance when we start, and we are live. So, welcome to Intercultural Spark, that show about the spark inside each of us that drives us to spark change in the world through your business or through your life projects. Our guest today is Dr. Wendy Sternberg. She's actually amazing. She's won like a gazillion awards, and she founded, and she's the creative, artistic, executive director of Genesis at the Crossroads. She works to build peace at the intersection of social justice, education, and the arts to foster healing around the globe. She is, again, not only the artistic director, not only the executive director, she's the artistic director. She's the driving force and has brought hundreds of programs around the globe to engage artists and musicians and young people from areas that are either currently in or have been in conflict. My name's Deanna Schaas. I am your host. I am the founder of Intercultural Talk, a digital, intercultural, and real-life marketing agency. And what I like to do is to add fuel to the fire for people who are pursuing those businesses and life projects. So welcome to Intercultural Spark. All right. Hello, Wendy. Welcome. It's so good to see you this morning.
Thank you, Deanna.
So, what I find fascinating is that you were a medical doctor in private practice when you originally started the work on Genesis at the Crossroads. So I'm just wondering if you remember the moment when sort of that light switch went on and you were like, oh yeah, this is what I need to be doing.
Yeah, that moment never leaves you, by the way. My spark was in a 3-minute conversation in a self-expression and leadership seminar. And the person sitting next to me, I was asked to turn to this random person to my left, who I didn't know at all. And the conversation in the room was around filters. So how do we see things? And do we recognize that we have a perspective, whether we want to be the most objective we can, we come with some element of bias.
Sure.
And so the conversation was about, could we take a moment to recognize we are seeing this situation, this person through a filter. So if you think about a person who says, my mother-in-law, or my teenage son, or there's automatic firing that occurs. So the leader in the seminar said, turn to the person to your left and discuss what you see. So serendipitously or randomly, this person happened to be an Arab American man. I'm a Jewish American woman. And we actually realized in the moment of turning to one another and talking that we had a lot in common, but we had never really connected to each other's communities. And at one point, his name was Rob. Rob said to me, you're the first Jewish woman I've ever listened to, meaning without the filter.
Interesting.
And
sure.
I call that my Magnavox moment, for those of you who are old enough to remember that commercial where your hair flies back. And for me, the floor fell out from under me, because I had known myself to be a person who could cross borders, be with anybody, but I had a sense of who this community was, and it was not in keeping with a number of things that I held to high esteem. And then I met this person who I felt so connected to in a matter of minutes. And that was the moment where I said, this is insane. How did this all get put together where there's so much animosity and even bordering on hatred for another community? And that was the genesis of Genesis at the Crossroads.
That idea is so fascinating. The idea of once you see something, you can't unsee it. Like once you have that experience and it shifts your mind, you really can't go back. And you've used that same language around the idea of creating art or creating music together. That if you're, talk about that, because you've talked about how if you're moved by something artistic that you create, you can't look at that creator the same way anymore. And that drives a lot, like with Saffron Caravan or some of the music and collaborative arts projects you do.
Oh, absolutely. I am forever looking at what I call the moment of shift. So the
Mhm.
moment of shift is that nanosecond where the person is moved and inspired by what they're seeing or feeling. They may not even be able to give words to it. It's an embodied feeling of connection. And it's very much on a human level. And at that moment, you can't go backwards. So if you're a person like with Saffron Caravan, our professional world music ensemble, and we have in that ensemble musicians from areas historically in conflict or embroiled in issues of conflict, when you're listening to Haitham Safia play the oud, and he is
Mm.
masterful at this, and literally his movement across the strings of the oud pull your heartstrings. His Arab background, who he is just a human being who's creating things that are about beauty and love and literally harmony. And his ability to share that instrument with you is transporting. And then you're left in curiosity. Where did this instrument come from? Who is this person? Where are they from? How do I share my identity the way this person shares her identity or his identity? It's a him.
Mm.
Um, and similarly, if you're a young person and you've grown up with a lot of inherited conversations about communities, whether you're from Cambodia or Northern
Mm.
Ireland or Pakistan, whatever your culture is, or in the United States between black and white, and that moment hits you, you are now drawn into the world of that other person, which draws you into the world of that community. And
Mm.
you can't go backwards.
Mhm. You know, I find that experience to be so powerful. I believe everyone should have the experience, especially being part of the majority. And what's interesting, so we're both Jewish women. So in some cases, we are a minority as Jews, but clearly we're both white. And so we have the ability to match sort of what the norms are of the majority culture. And so that experience of being the other, of going someplace where you are actually in the minority is so transformative. It's really powerful. And it sounds like a lot of your programs allow people to do that. Would you say that's true?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Mhm.
I travel into different circles, and I think I it's interesting. It depends on what I wear, but I have an ability to blend into certain circumstances. And I remember in 1999, late 1999, I went down to the south side of Chicago for a very large event in the Arab community, and I was wearing American clothing, but I was sitting at a table with a family. The mother was on the board, the grandmother was there, the daughter
Mhm.
was there, and they just assumed I was part of the Arab community. And the grandmother was discussing things with me, and I said, well, I'm actually not of this community. And there was this moment of utter sort of, I made such an assumption, and this is so shocking. And then her English wasn't so good, but she did
Mhm.
this movement that I'll never forget. She took her hands and she embraced my face.
Mm.
And it was just this moment of taking me into her heart, her family. I mean, I had dinner with her whole family. I was one with the family, but it was a moment of such intimate connection and warmth. And I think that more people need to have those opportunities. They're life altering.
Mhm. Well, you've had so many of them. You've traveled around the globe. And by the way, thank you to everyone who's joining live. I'm pretty excited. We're on YouTube, Facebook, and today it's the first time that we're also on LinkedIn. So for those joining live, please do say hello, and you're welcome to ask questions in the comments as well. But we'd love for you to say hello. We don't know if you're here unless you say hi to us, and we're both very friendly. So we would love that. Um, so Wendy, you've had so many experiences like this. Like you've had crazy experiences where you find yourself with just really in incongruous pairings. But you've talked about being in Cambodia and meeting people from that had been the Khmer Rouge as just a really meaningful and transformative experience for you. Tell us about that.
So I would say that that ranks in one of the moments, again, where the floor fell out from under me and all the things I assumed in my framework and my whole sense of how things are oriented in place and time and space and person get really disrupted. So I was in a very fortunate to be in a conflict resolution peace building studies fellowship in Southeast Asia. And our work in human rights was while the Khmer Rouge Tribunal was going on in Cambodia. And we broke up, we were a group of 22 people, myself included. We broke up into small groups and we drove deep into the jungle of Cambodia to interview the last stronghold of the Khmer Rouge. These were people who were murderers with the Khmer Rouge. They perpetrated the crimes against humanity. And we sat on a bamboo mat in the middle of the jungle, and myself, my colleague, Pial from Sri Lanka and Joseph from Kenya, sat and interviewed these 5 men while their grandchildren were climbing the coconut tree to drop a few coconuts and tap them because it was literally 115, north of 115 degrees with air trapping in the jungle. And what was utterly in the category of mind-blowing to me was that these men wanted to know why we were in Cambodia, what we were learning, what we were going to take home with us, what we thought, because of what we were taking home, the future could look like as a possibility. Okay. These were people that were part of groupthink and were commanded to do things that were unconscionable to me. But what they were asking was the essence of why I do what I do, which is what difference does that make? How do we put it in the world? How do we sustain it? And here we were with people who were supposedly uneducated from the migrant farm community that was ignorant. And they were asking profound questions. And we had a translator because these were nuanced answers and nuanced questions. And at one point, we thought we were done. We had all interviewed them and asked our questions, got what we needed for the work we were doing for our conflict studies program. And then the leader of the 5 men said, well, it's our turn. And I said, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean it's our turn? And they each took out a notebook and they started asking questions and writing down the answers. And I just thought, like, here's their grandchildren, and they're teaching their grandchildren about right and wrong, how to stand up to authority and domination. And there was just this human moment where this person stopped being a murderer for me. They just were a human being trapped in something. I don't think I could have done what they did if I had been commanded to. It was kill or be killed as the paradigm. I don't think I could do that, but I'm not ever put in that situation, thank God.
That's fascinating. So you saw the humanity of what, it's the idea of what drives people to do what they do. And I think Absolutely. You're right. We would never experience, hopefully, hope to God, never experience the level of the extremes that someone in another culture that would drive people to do what they do to survive. Or that's
we also have an opportunity. I mean, this was 20 years later. We also have an opportunity to rise above the circumstances that were a past. I mean, you look at people in prison, and I've met some of them. One in an Israeli cell who was Palestinian. I've met people, I mean, I never got a chance to meet Nelson Mandela, but you look at what he did in prison, not that he was a criminal, he was doing great work and was in prison for trying to shape South Africa. But people can have the ability to rise beyond what was their past. And I had an opportunity a number of years ago to work with a former skinhead who had done such hideous things on the street to people and racial profiling and ethnic profiling, and he became a peace builder. He had his own awakening through this. And the same with the Palestinian young man who was in an Israeli jail for throwing Molotov cocktails. I consider him a partner in peace building with me.
What's fascinating about that is that also takes forgiveness, because especially, oh my gosh, we're in such a big stage of cancel culture in the US now, where people will bring up something that someone said or did 30, 40 years ago and say, that's it, you're done. And this is much more of an evolution of allowing people to be who they are in the space that they are, where that
Oh,
allows or where that can happen.
yeah, I mean, to err is human. I had a meeting the other day that didn't go as long as it was supposed to because the person was late. Well, it's not like I've never been late. Like we have to
Mhm,
give each other some room, some space to. It's good if it's acknowledged, but to
mhm.
give people some space. Being late and committing a crime are obviously very different
Right.
things. But and I don't mean to equate them whatsoever.
Mhm,
I think we need to give each other space and
mhm,
allow for the best in ourselves to emerge and to bring that out in other people is, I think, a lot of what compels people to do the work with Genesis, to be
mhm,
partners in this work, is that they get to share a side of themselves that some of their other work never addresses or
mhm.
never calls them forth on that same
Mm.
level.
Or people just never see. So the work that you've done, so Genesis has been around for 20 years. You've done incredible, like I think it was what, 117 countries and huge festivals and really big visual things. And now, over the past year, there's been just a whole pivot. And how did you leverage technology for artistic creation under COVID? How did you pivot? I'm thinking in particular, I watched an amazing video of people from 4 different countries creating music together, where one was writing and one singing and different instruments. How did you do that pivot to get that same depth of connection, but using technology?
So, they say circumstance or problems are the mother of invention. So I think, we were in a situation, we had planned a year-long series of programs themed
Mhm,
around healing with our professional world music ensemble, Saffron Caravan, collaborating with a group of students that had been graduates of a leadership and peace building education program that we run called the Genesis Academy Summer Institute. And no great surprise, we have young people who are talented in the arts, and some of the young people were particularly talented in music and in creative writing.
mhm,
And we scheduled a number of things that were going to be in-person live performances, and that became absolutely impossible during the
mhm,
pandemic without, I mean, I'm a doctor after all, I'm not going to put people's lives at risk to do the work of
mhm,
peace building. It's kind of not okay to do that.
mhm,
And it was okay, well, I mean, I was on Zoom before the pandemic, but very rarely. So we had Zoom, we had technology. It actually was a vehicle that allowed us to reach far more people and engage far more people in a program.
mhm. Yeah.
So we had 47 graduates of the Summer Institute. Not all of them participated.
Mhm,
And we have 4 musicians in Saffron Caravan. We were able to add on the background percussion and the not even just background, but the foundation to the music was 2 Brazilian artists, one playing all
mhm,
different instruments from the slave trade and
mhm,
Africa and Brazil and all these abilities to add layers to the music. And so they live in Brazil. We were able to
mhm,
bring them into the conversation. Our students live all over the world.
mhm,
So we had students from the Democratic Republic of the Congo who are refugee. He's a refugee in Chicago. We had
mhm.
a number of people from Pakistan, one of whom is studying in Turkey. So, that came
Wow.
into the equation. The fact that he was in Turkey to Zoom makes no
No
difference.
difference, sure.
And and then we had a design and production team and a sound engineer in Brazil. And we
Mhm,
were able to bring in an artistic angle and eye from a different culture to bring to bear on our work that was so additive and beautiful. So we
mhm,
ended up being 37 people from 17 countries working on this. And we often had meetings at sort of the beginning or the end of the day when it was the next day in the next country. I mean, there was a bit of coordination to do, but
mhm,
we ended up having Zoom meetings by country to handle this part of the music or this lyrics or
mhm,
this part of the lyrics or this phrasing. And it allowed for such a blossoming and flourishing of artistic expression that enriched the program.
That's wonderful. I want to ask a question about that, but real quick, let's just wave hello to Mark. Mark says, "Good morning, Deanna and Wendy. I'm inspired by your story about the Khmer Rouge soldiers. Taking the time to genuinely get to know people so different from ourselves can really change our paradigms." And that is actually, Mark, thanks so much for joining us today. And for everyone else, please feel free to ask questions or say hello in the comments. But this idea of, you said, was it 37 people, 17 countries working together to produce a common product, that is a metaphor for how people can come together around conflict. So what are some of those practices that are involved in creating art that actually have a parallel to how we can help people come together in war-torn or conflict areas? Wait,
Well,
I just asked you to solve world peace. Wendy, can you just make it all better, please? And in like 2 minutes, go.
Yeah. So first of all, Mark, thank you for that beautiful comment. I think I preach all day long, day and night, that if you really want to learn anything at a very deep level, get displaced. Go to places, be with people totally different from yourselves, where your assumptions and the way you do things are completely different. And they will open up your worldview at a level and a depth that's unimaginable. So just to reference back to Cambodia, I was looking at human rights abuses and genocide through a Buddhist lens. I could never have had that experience reading about the Khmer Rouge in a book in a history class. It was a lived, embodied experience that's really, really important to be in front of people and grapple with what they're dealing with and be with them while they're talking about it. Really profound. So I think, to answer your question, Deanna, about what are the ingredients that make this possible? I think one is suspending disbelief. This is, how many times do you hear people say, that's not possible? And then they're sort of off the hook. Well, if it's not possible, why bother trying? Because it's not possible. So one is to suspend disbelief. And actually, sometimes, and even now, even as a thought leader in this space of building peace and fostering healing, I sometimes find myself waiting for somebody else to make the move. And some of it's not an ego trip to say, oh, I'm the person meant to do this, but to stop looking for the person who steps into the middle and has the courage and the wherewithal to say, I might not be doing this right. I might not be the person to do this, but I feel compelled to make a statement, to step out, to put my voice in the ring, or whatever it is. And for sure, you will get criticism. I had the chairman of a department of Judaic studies at a very prominent university tell me at the very beginning of Genesis, before I ever did any program, he said, oh, you're going to bring Arabs and Jews together through music. Yeah, good luck. And I hung up from that phone call, and I was so annoyed that this person was so cynical about another person who was willing to suspend disbelief. And instead of being angry, I just said, I will prove you so wrong.
That sounds like your personality too.
It is my personality.
Yeah. We are at that time of the show where we are going to do our flash exercise. So I hope that you will join me, or that anyone who is able to join me. We're going to stand for this part. If you're able to do it. So the flash exercise, I think, I'm also a fitness instructor. So I always like to do an exercise. Wendy, you add so much depth to anything. Like if you ask a question, you're going like way deep. So I like to pride myself on also adding depth to fitness. So I'm going to move this back and put myself onto full screen. We are going to do today's exercise, and our exercise always relates to the theme of our show. So as a fitness instructor, I'm going to get into fitness mode. Again, if you can join me, Wendy, I hope you're doing it. So I'm actually getting into fitness outfits. That's for the drama. All right. So this is an
it.
exercise both for core strength and for stability. So you're going to stand on one foot. I'm going to assume you're doing it. You have to trust that I'm doing it. You stand on one foot, bend your knee slightly, and then you extend. I'm going to try not to balance on my chair. What you're going to do is extend your legs and your arms. So you almost look like you're Superman flying through the air. So I'm standing on just my right foot, knee is slightly bent, and I've got a straight line from my fingers to my toe. And what that is doing, so try that if you can. You can do it on either leg. So again, you're on one foot. You can try it on the left leg now. Knee is bent, and then you extend fingers to toes. So one-legged stand. And you'll feel that you have to brace your core. You have to brace your abs to be able to be stable. You have to use your glutes in your leg to be able. Oh, good. Yes. Let me see. I'm going to put Wendy full string. Show us. All right. Fantastic. So Wendy, here's how. Do you want to know how this relates to all the work that you do? So, and we're
well,
going
I feel like sometimes when I nail a program, I feel like we're soaring. So there's some elements.
Oh, that's good. Oh, I love it. See, I knew you could go to this space with me. Absolutely. You're well, okay, there's so many reasons this exercise is perfect for you. One, you're soaring. Two, it's the Superman pose. So you're like Superwoman. And then the other thing is what I like about it, and we're just about to go into our picture. So we're going to have you back specifically to talk about the Peace Hub. But I was thinking of how you are looking at the idea of peace as the core of everything. So if you look at your leg as the trunk and the foundation, that's the peace hub. And then your whole body weight that expands, left and right and front and back. That's all the programs and the good that you do on top of that base. So that was our exercise, and that's how it expresses what you do.
Well, it's can I add one thing, Deanna?
Please.
You always say I go deep. So I have a painting behind me that's a tree, and I often think of things in this whole, where's the core stability? And to do that exercise, you need core strength.
That's core stability. That's what the exercise is.
There's this ability to branch out from that, which are your arms and legs, and have something that holds you solid, which in the work of doing a not-for-profit are your core values.
Mm-hmm.
And they allow you to anchor, to hold strength, to hold presence in any space. And one of the pitfalls of a lot of people who go into a not-for-profit paradigm is they follow fame and money. And that is sometimes not compatible with the core structure of your organization. And it's easy and it's understandable. The fundraising is always challenging, no matter what stage you're at. And it's easy to follow those pulls. And then people around you will say, well, of course, Wendy, the Smithsonian wanted you to do a program and they were throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Of course you did that. But what they wanted us to do was not in line with Genesis's mission. And I said no. And then you hear the other echo chamber that says, you're crazy.
No, following the money and not staying on your core base is always a problem. And I just want you to know how exciting it was. Not only did you do the exercise with me, you just actually explained it exactly as intended. And again, even deeper. So like if we can do here we go. High five. So wait, that'll be another exercise for next time.
Okay, here we go. Got
it. All right. So we're going into the final section because of the work that Wendy's done, all the awards. I mean, she's been like 40 under 40 and the state this, and she's spoken at the UN, like so complex. And I knew that we couldn't get everything in a short time. And so what we are going to do is to take a look. This is called the Flash Photo Series. And so what we're looking at here is Flash Photo Stories. So I've asked Wendy ahead of time to just send me 6 photos. She's just going to give me like a 1 or 2 sentence story about each. And we're going to go through them just so we can get a little bit more depth and see some of it. So Wendy, what is this?
So talk about displacement. We had the opportunity to work in Bosnia in the 20th anniversary year of the genocide. And this was, I would say, a series of moments. We were there for about 10 days. Or I was there for 10 days. The group was there for less than that. And we worked with a very famous composer, Nigel Osborne, who's the older man in the back with the blue shirt. And this was the very first time these musicians were brought together. And we did a performance for Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs, whose families 20 years earlier had been murdering one another. They came together for a concert in a concert hall that so much of the sound still wasn't back to normal after the war. The piano had been sold for firewood and used for firewood during the war because they had no heat. And we did a program, and Aaron, who's on the right-hand side of the picture, is a Moroccan vocalist who is trained in Jewish cantorial music. And he came up to me and he said, you know, I feel compelled to sing something for the dead, but I cannot do it as the Jewish prayer for the dead. They have to all be Jewish. So what do you think we can do? And I said, well, we're not political. We're not religious. You know, we want to touch on the human side of this. I said, and it sort of came out of my mouth. I said, I think we can say something like, this is a song for those that are not here with us and those that are here with us today. Those that could not be here with us today and those that are here with us.
That's amazing. So it was bringing people together, but then also even crossing really sensitive religious and cultural differences to be able to do something meaningful. That's really powerful.
And Aaron started sobbing in the middle of singing that.
Wow.
And the whole auditorium was in tears, myself included.
Wow. And Dr. Sternberg, what's happening here?
This was a very momentous day. My dad is pinning a corsage on my robe, graduating from the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine. My mom is looking on with that look like, you go, girl, that's my girl. You know, my mother was my biggest champion. And it was, again, moments you really remember. I remember standing up and taking the Hippocratic Oath. I can't recite the Hippocratic Oath, but I remember the emotion of that moment. And the University of Pennsylvania brought back the class that was celebrating its 50th anniversary reunion. And that was at a time where penicillin did not exist. It was like, what did you do? Wow. So, yeah, it was really momentous.
That's amazing.
In Philadelphia, where I lived.
And actually, you still, your being a medical physician plays a lot into what you do. I know, subject for another time, but just how you've gotten involved in and standing up to help advocate for the public health crisis that we've been going through. So, what is this?
Well,
I feel like, is this sideways?
It's a little bit sideways. You could turn it a little bit 90 degrees, but 90 degrees this way. So this is a Seder plate, and in it, in the center, which is where we put the symbolic foods, I've done a still life with dried out roses that were in a bouquet. And I chose this as one of the 6 because my foundation in Judaism has changed over the course of my lifetime, but it's always been the very underpinning of my entire life, particularly a Jewish tenet called Tikkun Olam, which is literally to repair the world. And for those people who are not religious, and I am much less religious than I was when I was growing up, it is this notion to leave the world a better place than how you found it. And that we all have not just an ability to do that, we have a duty to do that. And can I say one other thing about that photograph? I am an amateur photographer and I do quite a lot of macro photography. And one of my friends who sadly died last year said, he described me as like a diamond cutter, that I'll stay very, very present with a subject till I get the exact thing that I want out of the image. And it has been such a therapeutic benefit during the pandemic to take a camera and be in nature and be still and quiet and get that exact moment.
Mhm. There's a couple things with that as well. You and I have talked about one thing that's also very powerful is because I've been to Seder in Brazil, you've been to Seders in other countries, is how those traditions are the same in different countries going back 6,000 years. That's very grounding. But I also love every time I talk to you, you've got a new one. So you've been called a doctor without a border. You've been called what, the diamond cutter. There was another, it wasn't a bull in a china shop. You had asked me about that one. The one
No, not a bull. I am not
no,
a bull in a china
no,
shop.
what was the one? It was something about a
It
china
was a
shop.
tilter of windmills.
Oh, that's what it was. I'm so
Peter
sorry.
Yarrow called me a tilter of
Tilter of
windmills,
windmills. Okay,
and
so the reason that I thought that though that also though is really positive and affectionate is because you don't take incremental change. Like you want to see change happen and will work hard to do it. So I just love that people have all these different affectionate names for you that really capture the power and strength that you bring to everything you do. And we're almost done. We just have a couple more photos. So for everyone watching live, please say hello so we know who's here. We love having friends, and any other additional questions for Wendy, now's the time. Tell us what this photo is.
this is Saffron Caravan, a more recent photo. We had a Bosnian percussionist who is no longer in the ensemble. And we have Javier Salme Matze, who joined Aaron Ben Susan, Haitam Safi, and Baji Assad. And he's from Venezuela and
Mhm,
brings to the instrumentation and the personalities and the world of Venezuela and all of the trauma going on in Venezuela. And we
mhm,
have a whole series of young people that come to our summer institute from Venezuela. And I literally say that we could put that country in their hands, and Javier could be the song line for it, and it would be a beautiful world there.
mm.
Oh, this is one of my favorites.
Yeah, and why is that? What's happening here?
So, there are moments and there are moments. So I have been blessed with a lot of moments, but I woke up one day and said, we're trying to build a boarding school for global leadership, which of course the pandemic has now made untenable. But we started with a proof of concept. And I am the card carrying member of the club that says you start with a pilot program that's
Mhm,
smaller, that's manageable, that you can get your arms around and test drive the whole concept. So
mhm,
it's not to put a check in a box for a foundation that you've done the pre-packaged program. You do it for your own learning, and
mhm,
and it allows you to push back at your own assumptions and open up a lot of different information, and then poll the people that were in the program. Did this have the desired result I had for you? And if not, why not?
mm,
And if it went beyond that, what went beyond that, so I can get my hands and my head around the magic? So this was the very first Genesis Academy Summer Institute. We had
mm,
students from the Mexican American community, the African American Muslim community. We had, actually, they were not even African American, they were Black American Muslim who had their heritage in different parts of the world, but they were born in the United States. Their parents
mhm,
were born in South Africa.
mhm.
And we had people from Bosnia, Northern Ireland, Cambodia. The young woman in the middle was a 15-year-old young woman who looked down. For the first week of the Summer Institute, she couldn't look you in the face. She's now completing her college degree in broadcast journalism that came out of this program.
Wow. Oh, that's so exciting. And I
And
love how you keep in touch with people afterwards to see what that you're measuring the results of what you're doing, but that also you're staying in touch because that's what's really powerful is to measure what happens 10 years ago, 10 years from now. How
and
did the program actually impact people's lives? That's big.
No doubt. And the person to her right,
Mhm,
Asa Malone, was from Northern Ireland. He's now working in policy in London. He did a human rights law degree after high school. And I remember him in the program. The refugee crisis was well, it's still at a height. We're just
mhm,
talking about other things. But um, I remember I was a stickler for them all being on time and being responsible for one another to be
mhm,
on time, as this whole notion of collective responsibility. And one
mhm,
day he came in, he looked like he hadn't slept very well, and he said, I get it. I said, what? You get what? He said, I get it. When one of us is late, we're all late. When one of us is a refugee, we're all refugees.
mm. So powerful. And that's out of, to be clear with everyone, that Summer Institute ran how many summers?
Well, it's still running.
It's still
We're
running
bringing the class that was the cohort that was supposed to be in 2020 back in
in
2022.
2022.
So it
So,
started in 2015. This will be our sixth year and the eighth year since the beginning because of the pandemic.
mhm. And again, just given your passion and what you bring to the organization, you're actually leading a lot of those conversations, which is why it's so meaningful and connected as well. I love this one because it looks like a picture capturing pure joy.
It is.
Yeah. And
So this is one of my closest friends who sadly passed away in October.
mm,
And it's funny, last night I'm very close to their family. I was talking to
mm,
his brother, and we were sharing videos and songs and photographs that remind us of Mark. So Mark Johnson was a larger than life figure in the peace building movement. He was a conscientious objector to Vietnam. He worked in the Fellowship of Reconciliation as the head of it, worked with Iran, worked all over the world.
mhm,
And he ran the YMCA for quite a number of years and was living in an intentional community in California that was all about our humanism towards the end of his life. And his widow, his wife, is still in that community. And this was a moment where a friend of mine who was my walking partner during the COVID pandemic said, well, of course, Mark is complete about dying. He's going to meet his maker. He's a
mhm,
Christian man who's very connected to his deity. And we were having breakfast. This was the last time I saw Mark. It was just before he passed away. And I said to him, I have so long to go. Like I have not done all the things I need to do. There's so much more for me to do. How is it you're so complete that you're able to
mhm,
know you're dying and you've done everything you've done? And I said, well, my friend has a theory that you're going to meet your maker. And at that moment, this man who came into the restaurant with a walker with a catheter in his bladder and the
wow.
bag hanging on the walker and emaciated. He uncharacteristically leaned back with this belly laugh, and I caught him with my iPhone right at that moment. And he sits back up and he says, "Oh my God, that's so not it. I don't even believe in God." And it was this moment of so how is it you're so level-headed and calm about and your life ending? And he said, because I've done everything I want to do.
Wow. And it sounds like you are on the path to that as well as you continue to create and grow. One final question, because we're gonna get going. I know we could talk probably for 3 years and still be coming up with new things to talk about. But if you had to kind of encapsulate the spark that drives what you do in just one or two words, what would that word be? Something that really lights your heart on fire. I know it feels like even just talking about the photos, you've connected emotionally. It feels like you've gotten very emotional talking about a lot of these memories as we've gone through some of the photos and stories. But what's that one thing that you think that drives, that kind of sets your heart on fire for the work that you do?
Wow. Oh, the one thing, one.
Yes, if you could pick, I am going to
Oh,
make you do that. If you could pick one word. And
I
I'm
think
only, mhm,
it's well, it's a modifier with one word, but it's connection.
mhm,
When you show me that picture and you're asking, what is this all about? I'm connected to that moment where I looked around this room and I brought these young people from all over the world together
so
to
exciting.
say, you are now my legacy in peace building. But I think that the other two words are healing and legacy.
Mhm,
So I really I can't pick one word. The connection allows for healing. And when healing is alive and well, and you engage people intergenerationally, you leave a legacy.
mhm.
That's what the Peace Hub is. The Peace Hub is our legacy to keep this going into generations long beyond myself and all those young people you saw.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Intercultural Spark. You are just a shining example of that idea of that spark inside you that drives you to do work. But I also love that idea of never saying it can't be done or it hasn't been done. It's how am I gonna do it? That's what tilting windmills is about. It's I'm gonna make this happen. I'm really going to draw people together to actually, it's almost like an us thing. We're all going to make this happen. So thank you so much for being here. I will make sure that in the comments afterwards, we'll make sure that we have all the ways to connect with you on the website, social media and things like that, so that people can follow up and get involved. Because I know, of course, as a not-for-profit, donations are always good. I'm imagining you use volunteers. So all those are possibilities to be able to support you. So
Yes,
Wendy, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Really appreciate it. And for everyone else, we will see you next Thursday. Next Thursday, kind of exciting. We have both actually someone who was my intern probably 5 years ago, and Lynn Hazen, who works with interns all the time. We're bringing us all together to look at how learning is multidimensional now. It's not sort of the days, which is what you talked about, Wendy. It's not the
very
days
much
where it's
so.
like the grown-up in charge is doing the teaching. The world continues to change, and we all have such deep experience that the only way we can all thrive and be positive and have a hopeful future is by that multi-directional learning. So we'll talk about that next week. And thank you again for joining us on Intercultural Spark.
Thank you, Deanna. It was a pleasure and great questions. It's always great to have a great interviewer because it draws out the story and the narrative and why I do what I do.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. All right, we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.